The smell of damp concrete and reheated coffee filled the air of the precinct. It was late, and I should have been home, but instead, I was here, with tense shoulders and a bitter taste in my mouth. Because in front of me, sitting with her wrists handcuffed on the cold metal table, was her. "What's the problem, officer?" Her voice came with a challenging tone, a hint of sarcasm. "Were you expecting someone different?" I raised an eyebrow, refusing to be affected. "I was expecting someone less annoying." She chuckled softly, and that sound bothered me more than it should have. I glanced over the report in front of me. Minor theft. Possible connection to a bigger suspect. Nothing that justified her calm expression, as if she were used to this. I raised my gaze. She was looking at me, directly, unafraid. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" Keeping my tone neutral. She tilted her head, as if assessing my intentions. "And what if I say I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time?" I crossed my arms. "That's what everyone says. Then maybe this time it's true." Her tone wasn't pleading. There was no attempt at persuasion, just an irritating certainty, as if I were the fool for doubting her. And that bothered me, because I had seen too many guilty people trying to play innocent. I already knew the pattern, the body language, the averted gazes. But her, she didn't seem worried at all. And maybe that was what bothered me the most. I leaned forward a bit, examining her more closely. Messy hair, a small cut on the corner of her lip, red marks on her wrists, signs of someone who had gotten involved in something bigger than she wanted to admit. She noticed my gaze and smiled slightly. "Are you going to analyze me all night, detective?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay in control. "I'm just trying to understand what you're hiding." Her eyes sparkled, something dangerous and provocative in them. "And what if I say, I'm hiding nothing?" I maintained my impassive expression. "Then I'd say you're a terrible liar." Her smile widened, and for a second, something passed between us. A challenge, an unspoken game. But I was a cop. She was a suspect. And as much as my intuition screamed that something was off, I couldn't afford to hesitate. Not yet. The cold light of the interrogation room cast subtle shadows over her features. I watched from a distance, arms crossed, trying to fit the puzzle pieces together. She was still there, sitting, her expression far too calm for someone who had just been arrested. She seems pretty comfortable, considering the situation. My partner, Reed, murmured beside me. He wasn't wrong, but that bothered me. I should have been satisfied to have taken another potential criminal off the streets. But something didn't add up. I picked up her report again. No significant criminal record. No clear connection to the names we were investigating. So why did I still have this feeling that I was making a mistake? Reed sighed. "You're overthinking this." I closed the file and stared at him. "And what if she's telling the truth?" He scoffed. "Everyone claims to tell the truth, until we prove otherwise." I turned my face toward the observation mirror, watching her once more. And then, as if she felt my gaze, she lifted her chin and looked directly at the glass. As if she knew I was there. As if she challenged me to look beyond the surface. My jaw clenched. Why the hell was I hesitating? I tightened my fingers around the file. Maybe it was time to do something I had been avoiding for a long time. Trust my instincts. And my instincts told me that this woman was hiding much more than she seemed. The question was, did that make her more guilty? Or something much worse? Innocent. The bar was one of the few places in town where I could think. Maybe it was the constant buzz of other people's conversations, or the fact that no one there cared about anything other than their own drink. But that night, even the familiar environment couldn't calm my mind, because I couldn't stop thinking about her. "You're very quiet." I looked up and saw Reed staring at me from across the table, his fingers absent-mindedly spinning a glass of whiskey. "I'm just tired," I murmured, bringing my beer to my lips. He laughed. "Right. And your mulling over your detainee's case has nothing to do with it." My jaw tightened. "I'm not mulling over anything. Reed raised an eyebrow. Of course not. That's why you've been analyzing her report 100 times today. I let out a heavy sigh and ran my hand over my face. There's just something that doesn't add up, Reed. He leaned back in his chair, curious. What do you mean? I slammed the glass down on the table harder than I intended. She didn't react like someone guilty would. She didn't try to defend herself, nor did she panic. But she also didn't act like someone who felt wronged. Maybe because she's used to being in this kind of situation. Or maybe because she knows something we don't. Reed was silent for a moment, taking a sip of his whiskey before speaking. Look, I know your instincts are usually right, but you know how this kind of thing goes. People who seem innocent can be much more dangerous than we imagine. My mouth pressed into a thin line. I knew. Of course I knew. But then, why did I feel that this time was different? I grabbed my phone and, almost without thinking, opened her file again. My eyes scanned the record until they stopped at a detail I hadn't noticed before. A connection to someone I was really interested in, a name I hadn't expected to see there. My breath faltered, and in that instant, I was sure of one thing. Either she was lying, or she was in much more danger than she realized. She shouldn't be here. I knew that, and she did too. But there she was, sitting next to me in the passenger seat, her hands in her lap, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. You know, if you wanted a date, there were easier ways to ask me out, she said, with that light and teasing tone that was already starting to affect me more than it should. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. It's not a date. She laughed softly. Then why did you get me out of jail? I let out a heavy sigh. Good question. The truth. The evidence I found suggested that she was much more involved in the case than I had imagined. But not in the way I thought. I still didn't know exactly how, but something told me she wasn't the wrong piece in the puzzle. She was the puzzle itself. You have questions, she murmured after a while, and you think that by keeping me close, you'll get the answers, more or less. And what happens when you get what you want? Are you going to throw me back in the cell? I turned my face to her quickly, before returning my attention to the road. It depends on what I find out. She was silent for a moment, but when she spoke again, her voice was different. Do you really believe I'm guilty? My throat went dry, because for the first time I wasn't sure. And that was a problem. Because if I was wrong about her, if she really wasn't who I thought she was, then I would have made a mistake that couldn't be undone. And somehow, I began to think that the biggest mistake wasn't locking her up. It was letting her go. The hotel was simple, discreet. The kind of place no one would remember after a night. And I needed it to be that way. I had broken rules before, but never like this. Never for someone. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, arms crossed and a closed expression on her face. The yellowish light from the lamp cast soft shadows on her face, making it impossible to ignore the fact that for the first time she looked vulnerable. But it wasn't the obvious kind of vulnerability. There was no fear etched on her face, no pleas in her eyes. There was exhaustion, and something I couldn't name. So this is where I'm spending the night? She asked, her voice heavy with irony. I placed my hands on my hips, letting out a sigh. Would you rather go back to the precinct? She laughed softly, shaking her head. No, but I'd much rather not be watched by a cop who clearly doesn't know what to do with me. My jaw tightened, because she was right. I didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't just a case. She wasn't just a problem to be solved. She was a problem I wanted to keep close. And that was unacceptable. You're involved in something bigger than you admit, I said, trying to cling to logic. To something solid. And like it or not, I'm the only thing standing between you and a worse fate. She looked at me for a moment, as if trying to decide whether it was worth saying what she really thought. And then, she got up. Slowly. In no hurry. but it was enough to change the air in the room. She took a step, then another, until she was too close. Close enough that I could smell her perfume, feel her breath, the heat radiating from her body. Close enough to be a mistake. You say that as if I'm not the danger itself, detective. My throat went dry. And aren't you? She smiled, tilting her face slightly. You seem uncertain. I was. And she knew it. She felt it. Her gaze met mine, and for a moment, the silence was louder than any word. Because there, in that small space, we both knew there was something that shouldn't exist between us. Something I couldn't control. Something I didn't want to control. But if I crossed that line, there would be no turning back. I should pull away. I should put the damn distance between us and remember who I was, what I swore to protect. But there she was, so close I could feel the heat of her skin, her eyes heavy with something I could no longer pretend not to see. She wanted me as desperately as I wanted her. And that was the problem, because I should never want someone like that. Before I did something that would compromise me, my phone vibrated in my pocket. The sound yanked us from that moment like a bucket of cold water. I averted my gaze, forcing my breathing to return to normal before answering. Talk. My partner's voice came through on the other end, tense. We found something. You need to see this. Now. I knew in that instant. The case had just changed. I looked at her, and her expression had also changed. It was no longer teasing or ironic. It was a contained fear, a ghost I couldn't name. But somehow I recognized it. I swallowed hard. Come with me. She hesitated. Where to? I pressed my lips together. To find out the truth. She studied me for a moment, and I saw the dilemma etched in her eyes. But then, with a tired sigh, she took a step forward. All right, detective. Let's find out how far this truth will take us. I just didn't know if I was ready for the answer. The truth hit like a punch to the gut. And worse than that, it came from the hands of the man I least expected. You knew him, I said, my voice tenser than I would have liked. She didn't deny it. The name that came up in the investigation, the name of the true target of this case, was not unfamiliar to her. It was someone from her past. That doesn't change anything, she said, crossing her arms, but the way she looked away gave it all away. It changes everything. The room was dark, lit only by the weak light of the street lamp outside. The building we were in wasn't official, but it was safe. At least, that's what I tried to convince myself. I needed to think. I needed to understand what to do with this new information. But all I could focus on was her. The way her breathing was uneven. The way she tried to remain cool, but I could see the fear there. And damn, it killed me inside. Tell me what he did to you. She laughed without humor. And what does it matter? Do you still think you can save me, detective? I clenched my fists. I just want the truth. She looked at me then, really. And for a second, something between us changed. Because there was no more game, no more teasing, just the two of us. And everything we had held on to for too long. She stepped forward, then another. And I should have backed away. I should have been stronger. But by the time I realized it, it was too late. Because her lips were on mine. And the last line between us had just been crossed. The kiss was an electric shock, a silent explosion that swept everything around us away. It wasn't sweet. It was need. My fingers slid to the back of her neck, and I felt her skin ripple under my touch. She clenched her fists in my shirt, as if she needed to hold on to something, or as if she wanted to pull me even closer. And I let her. Because for the first time since I met her, I didn't want to fight it. But then, a loud knock on the door brought us back to reality. The reality that she was still a suspect, and I was still the cop who was supposed to arrest her. She pulled away first, her red lips, her eyes heavy with a mix of desire and regret. I ran a hand over my face, taking a deep breath, trying to compose myself. But it was useless, because her taste was still in my mouth. And I knew in that instant that there was no turning back. I was screwed. It was the only possible conclusion as I drove through the city, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. She was in the passenger seat, silent, but I knew her mind was racing. Mine was too. I should take her back, to the precinct, away from me, to anywhere I didn't feel torn between what was right and what I wanted. But damn, I was already in too deep. The phone vibrated on the dashboard. Reed. I took a deep breath before answering. Speak. Where the hell are you? My jaw locked. Dealing with something. Dealing with something. You know your orders were clear, right? Stay away from her. My gaze slid to the side. She was still staring at the road, her jaw clenched, as if waiting to hear my answer. But I didn't have one, because something inside me knew that if I left her now, she wouldn't survive. I let out a slow breath. I can't do that. The silence on the other end was heavy. And then Reed cursed. You can't be serious. But I was. And for the first time in my life, I was about to break all the rules for someone. I ended the call without further explanation. She finally turned to me, her eyes shining with something between confusion and distrust. You shouldn't be doing this. I knew. Too late. Her gaze met mine, and in that moment, without words, we both understood. I had chosen a side, and that side was her. The knock on the door was like an alarm shot, a brutal reminder of the real world. Reed walked in uninvited, his eyes jumping from me to her in an instant. I didn't know what he saw, but I knew what he suspected. We need to talk. His voice came tense, professional. The look he shot me said it all. I rubbed my face and nodded. Wait here. My voice came out harsher than I intended as I addressed her. She didn't respond, just watched me with that inscrutable expression that made me feel like I was the only transparent one there. I stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind me. Reed crossed his arms. What the hell are you doing, man? My jaw locked. Doing my job. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Your job? He stepped forward, lowering his voice. Because from the outside it looks like something else. I swallowed hard, but didn't back down. What do you have? Reed studied me for a second before sighing. The order came from above. The case has been taken out of your hands. My muscles tensed. What? You heard. You're out. And you know what that means. My chest tightened. I knew exactly what it meant. She would be unprotected. And if the name that came up in the investigation was really linked to her, she was in real danger. Reed continued. You have until tomorrow to completely distance yourself. Turn in the report and let another team take over. I let out a heavy sigh. This is a mistake. The mistake is what you're doing. He narrowed his eyes. Tell me you're not compromised, that you can still see things clearly. I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come, because I had already crossed the line. I knew it. Reed knew it. And more than anything, she knew it. So the question now wasn't whether I should pull away. The question was, if I could. I should have walked away. I should have turned in the case, followed orders, let another team take over. But when I walked back into the room, she was gone. Blood froze in my veins. The lamp was still on. The bed, untouched. No sign of a struggle, no mark that she had been taken by force. That only meant one thing. She ran. I cursed and ran a hand over my face, my mind spinning in 1,000 directions. Why the hell would she do this? After everything? After what happened between us? I picked up the phone and dialed a number. Reed, I said as soon as he answered. Tell me she's in custody. There was a pause, then the answer I feared. No. I closed my eyes, feeling an overwhelming weight in my chest. You know what that means, right? Reed's voice came tense. If she's on the run, there's nothing you can do. It's out of our hands now. No. I knew exactly whose hands would reach her first, and that wasn't an option. I found her in an abandoned warehouse in the forgotten part of the city. She was alone, or at least she thought she was. The dim streetlight illuminated her face, and for the first time she looked exhausted. When my presence hit her, she turned slowly. "Are you here to arrest me, detective?" My breath came out heavy. "You know I'm not." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Then why are you here?" I stepped forward. "Because you're about to do something stupid." "I'm trying to save my life." My jaw clenched. "By running away?" She crossed her arms, her gaze filled with something that tore me apart inside. "You can't save me, detective." I knew at that moment. She was preparing to disappear, to vanish without a trace, to pull away from me, and maybe that was the right thing to do. Maybe that was what I should allow. But damn, I couldn't. My body moved before my mind processed it, and before she could react, I was holding her face in my hands. She gasped in shock. "What are you doing?" My voice came out low. "Trying to stop you from destroying me." Her eyes sparkled, a mix of anger and something else. Something I recognized, something I felt too. She tried to pull away. I wouldn't let her. "You want to run away?" I whispered. "Then go. But tell me you don't feel anything before you leave." She tensed. "Ethan, say it." Silence. Long. Cutting. Then, instead of speaking, she kissed me. It wasn't like the first time. This time, there was something desperate there, something that said this was a goodbye. But it couldn't be, because I wouldn't let it be. And if to save her, I had to break all the rules, then so be it. The distant siren echoed through the night, a brutal reminder that time was running out. She should be running away. I should be arresting her. But instead, we were here, standing in front of each other, hearts racing from what we had just done, from what we were to each other, even without admitting it. She wiped her lips with the back of her hand, as if trying to erase the kiss, as if she wanted to erase me. But it was too late for that. I was already marked by her just as she was marked by me. "You need to go," I murmured, even knowing that each word was a cut on my own skin. She tensed. "What?" I swallowed hard. "Do you want a chance to start over? Then go now, before it's too late." Her eyes searched mine, looking for something, anything that contradicted my words. But I couldn't go back. I wanted her with me. But I wanted more for her to live, to be free. Because I could protect her from a lot of things. But I couldn't protect her from me. She shook her head. Anger and pain etched across her face. "You can't be serious." "I am." She laughed humorlessly. "After everything, you're just going to send me away." My jaw clenched. "I'm giving you the only chance you have." She clenched her fists at her sides, fighting against something inside her. Something that, for God's sake, I wanted to win. I wanted her to choose me. But I knew that if I truly loved her, I couldn't let her stay. The seconds stretched like sharp knives between us, until she let out a tremulous sigh and took a step back, then another, and I felt the ground crumble beneath my feet. Because she was leaving, and I wasn't stopping her. She stopped at the door, not looking at me, but her voice came low. "You didn't fall in love with me despite everything, Ethan." My chest tightened. "You fell in love with me because of everything." And then, she was gone. Just the sound of my heavy breathing was left behind, because she took my heart with her. And I knew, in that instant, if I had to choose between the law and her 1,000 times, I would choose her. Every time. She was gone. But she never really left. Because some people come into your life like a fire, devastating, impossible to ignore. And no matter how hard you try to extinguish the flames, they always leave scars. Now, she was back. And the only question left was, Would I be strong enough to let her go again? Or this time, would I fight for her? And now, I want to know from you. What would you do in the detective's place? Should he give in completely or run away from this feeling before it's too late? Comment below. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more intense stories like this one.